So, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a few notes here, but I probably won't really refer to them much, just to get me through, if you can, if you abide with me, because I'm not used to talking. I talk in pubs and clubs and things, but not, where we are. But what it is, isn't it? So, I was a naughty boy. I was involved in counterfeiting American dollars, which at the time, Back in 1991, I was at the Old Bailey. I was already doing 5 years for handling counterfeit money, and I was told I'd get another 10 if I was found guilty. I had a 2-month trial at the Old Bailey, and luckily I was found not guilty, along with 13 of us. It was all over the news of the world and things in them days. It's fiat currency. It was, basically, it was a waste of time. But anyway, so I've met plenty of interesting characters in jail, including many solicitors, MPs, John Ryman, the ex-CPS guy. I've met all these characters in there. They don't particularly like it, but we'll see if we can get them back in there soon. So I was always pretty much a free man until my father died. My father's a self-made man, a scrap merchant who owns a hard-working geezer, owned a lot of property in Hereford. And that's all he did was work, and all I did was nothing. My dad wouldn't give me nothing, mind, but I went out and did my own things and ended up going to jail occasionally. So anyway, when my father died and I inherited all this stuff, I started getting demands for this and that, and off companies and off the council, and I thought, who are these characters constantly harassing me for money now? I don't know you. Who are you? Knocking my door. Who are you? So I started questioning it, and I started getting involved in looking at the free man stuff. And of course, I went through the schooling of Robert Menard stuff, and got Veronica Chapman's book, which is a UK-based thing, which is, to me, was more relevant at the time. So, when I was in jail, I was always a barrack room lawyer. So, if anyone had an appeal or anything, the object of the exercise when you're in prison is to get out. So, I'd get archbolds and I'd be looking for grounds for appeal for people. And a few people got out, so I was versed in common law. Well, 3 years later now, I'm versed in administrative court procedures, and we have remedies. So, might be for me. So we're all equal under the law, they tell us, don't they? Well, that's only if you know the law, right? Because ignorance of the law is no excuse. And contempt of court will show you this. Because you cannot be done for contempt of court in a magistrate's court if you know the law. Impossible. You certainly can't be done for contempt of court in any county court procedure. It's impossible, because contempt of court is solely the creature of common law. Check out Lord Donaldson, Archbold. Solely the creature of the common law. But if you don't know it's a court, if you believe it is a court, then you're consenting to it being a court, and they can charge you with contempt of court. Well, what they do is they usually hold you in contempt, which is a different thing. So they hold you in contempt, and then you can purge your contempt. But the bottom line is that you cannot be done for contempt of court in these courts if you know the law on the subject. And if you're interested, investigate it, and what you'll see what I'm telling you is true. So what we've been doing is we've been going around attempting to arrest judges, council officers, bailiffs, because it's them breaking the law, not you, and I can show you that. There are things called commercial liens, which John's briefly said about, and there's a thing called tort law. Now, does anyone know what tort law is? A few hands. Well, tort means wrong, really, and it's prejudicial and it's non-judicial. So let's look at it. Imagine I have a card game, and I lose £1,000 to you. I don't need some judge telling me I owe you £1,000. You know it, I know it. End of story. So if I go around your place and take your lawnmower, what does that mean? You tell the police he's burgled my house and has taken the lawnmower. No. He owes me money in a card game. I can prove it. There were witnesses. And I've taken his lawnmower. I've sold it in a local auction house for £20, and I've taken it off his £1,000 bill. You've then established the claim. The police won't get involved. They'll say, well, no, civil debt. And that's what you do. So that's the basic one. I did this in 1983. I used to have a window cleaning around in Hereford, and a chap stole some ladders off me. We didn't steal it, he borrowed them and he didn't give me them back when I came back from holiday. So I went round his house, climbed into his house, took his video recorder and his telly out. And so in broad daylight I've taken it. Of course the police come and arrest me because to them it's a burglary. I said, no, I had no intention to permanently deprive anybody of anything. So it can't be a burglary. So this went on for a while. They realised the score and they let it go. Well, some 8 years later, I was working for the official receiver, believe it or not. A local bakery was closing down, and they were selling all the stock off. So I decided to work nights in this place. Well, when it came to paying out the last final paycheck, they wouldn't give us the money. So I said, well, you'll have to wait till the estate's finished and sorted. Well, we're not having that. So they had two big Welsh dresses in Hereford, where I'm from. In the town centre, I pulled up in a van at midnight. Of course, everyone's used to seeing me in the bakery. Opened the doors, taken out these two big Welsh dressers, loaded them in the back of a van, taken them to a local housing estate and hid them on the garage. Of course, the police come and got me yet again. So I said, no. I'm holding them as a lien from the debt that's owed me. Of course, this went through, and of course, they gave me the money. I gave them the Welsh dressers back. So that's the basic fundament of a commercial lien. You know, it's if you take someone's glasses, they can take yours. Yeah, and so that's that, right? And tort law is a harm, right? So basically, it's a wrong. Well, if you're getting letters off people that you don't want to contract with, that you don't know, and they're asking you for things, they're causing you to suffer a tort. And if they're causing you to suffer a tort, you can cause them to suffer a commercial lien. Exactly the same principle. It's a mirrored image of what they're doing. And it's prejudicial and it's non-judicial. So how you do that is this. First and foremost, let's look at an example. I went to court with John Hurst the other week, gangs again, and what they do is, because they know I'm likely to arrest the judge, not assault him, but arrest him, which I find very confusing. Do they think I'm going to slap the bracelets on him and whip him around some private jail somewhere? You know, because what's going on? But if I arrest him, I'm going to arrest him for unlawful administration of his oath, contrary to Section 13 of the Statutory Declarations Act 1835. Or the Fraud Act 2006, which is a wonderful instrument we've been given now the last 5 years. But when we went to the court, they were taking myself and my wife to bankruptcy procedure. Well, we own a lot of property, but we just won't play ball with these guys. So, cut a long story short, when we go to the court, it's not in the county court room now, it's in the Crown Court, where the little county court judge, comes wiggling in with his two copper mates or whatever and goes into the proper courtroom now. He thinks he's a proper judge now. So what I do is I go up to the council's prosecutor and I say, Daniel Godfrey his name is, the lad. He's not a bad lad, but... And I say, Daniel, now I've told you before that you're causing me to suffer a tort by being in these unlawful proceedings. And you're here today. And he said, yes. And I said, right, do you wish to go into that arena? Because if you do, it's going to cost you £500,000. And I have a bill of exchange for you here with that on. So I serve in the papers, and of course we end up going into the arena, as it were. So of course this judge comes out, who I've got a particular problem with, who I've charged with unlawful administration of his oath, and I've also charged him with the Fraud Act 2006, which we had a court case over last week. So the judge comes out, blah, blah, all goes on. So the moment I get up and start talking, he says, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Well, it doesn't mean he's deaf. It means that he can't hear the law. So he goes, so I said, no, because you're an administrative criminal. That's why you can't hear me, son. So he gets up and starts walking out. I said, you're a rubber stamping clown. And they lock him in a little room. So the security guard at the top of the arena sticks his thumbs up to me. So I then go over to Daniel Godfrey, the chap I've seen before, and I say, Daniel, sorry about that, but we have to deal with these criminals like that. It's the only way. Now, you've had your bill of exchange. Where do you want me to send your bill of obligation to? Shall I send it to your office, or shall I send it to Wire Piddle, which is his address, which he didn't realise that I knew? So he went, well, About 24 hours later, at 1 o'clock in the morning, the police come round and arrest me for harassment, which I've had before. The council, they do it regularly. It's just Nazis, right? So, why are you round here? Drag me off to the police station, you know, middle of the night. No need for it. I've sent him a lawful document. How do you know his address? How does he know my address? So for him to send me stuff, I can't send him. So we've had lots of these cases, and it's comical, because what you've got to look at is this. When you've been at the Old Bailey doing 5 years, looking at another 10, and you've spent 2 months, every day for 2 months, dragged from Wandsworth Prison to the Old Bailey, every day for 2 months, right? Council tax and that doesn't really hold much fear for you. So, and now I realise that the criminals, the guys in jail, were just misguided chaps in the majority. I mean, obviously there's a few, but the criminals are out here, man. The criminals are out here amongst us, and they're the judges. So, it goes loud and then it goes quiet. What I've said is this, and studying common law, which I have done, and my great friend Veronica Chapman has helped me no end in this. And what we're dealing with basically is, common law is the motherboard. Statute law is a program or a chip on top of the motherboard, which has to feed through the motherboard. There's no other way. Otherwise, like she says, if you're in a court of law, a statute court, and common law doesn't apply, then I could kill the judge, because common law doesn't apply in here. And so what the judge said to me back last Monday, which we had a very good, and if you go to FMOTL, I think it's all uploaded, the 2-hour tape of me and the judge having and the judge, to be honest with you, we're starting to get some sense out of these people. You know, I read Halsbury's to him, a section that John and Mike Burke had given me, which says, and when I read this is it then, isn't it? Halsbury's on Administrative Law, 2011. The law is absolutely clear on this subject. There is no authority for administrative courts in this country, and no act can be passed to legitimise them. It's endgame, isn't it? I mean, you know, why am I here? Why am I here? So I read this to the judge, and the judge actually said, "What, that says that in Halsbury's?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "That could cause a problem." So I said to him, "Well, fine. What am I doing here?" I'm reading directly off what I wrote at the time. "What am I doing here? Being made to suffer a tort. What is anybody doing called into these unlawful administrative hearings? This isn't a court. It's some sort of CESCAV trust, which I won't go into with you, but it's a trust meeting." So I said to the judge, "Maybe I'll be the grantor today, and you can be the beneficiary," which he recoiled. I said, "It's not much of a trust, is it? Because it doesn't even trust those it invites with a summons to tell them it's a trust. Far from it. Sounds like fraud by false representation to me, Section 2 of the Fraud Act 2006. Sounds like fraud by failing to disclose information to me, Section 3 of the Fraud Act 2006. And it sounds like fraud by abuse of position, Section 4 of the Fraud Act 2006. And Section 4.2 states clearly, a person may be regarded as having abused his position even though his conduct consisted of an omission other than an act." Well, there you go. End game. So if you know these areas of the law, it's the end game for them. And so now, like I say, with that judge there, he was very accommodating to us. He apologised for previous, and you can hear it if you go to the upload, for the way the judges have dealt with us before, not listening to free men, because they just sort of battered it to one side and just started shouting at us, becoming shouty judges. So we're starting to get some sort of, remedy with these people now, yeah? And we're starting to get them to listen to us. But we have to know, and I advise everyone to go. I mean, court can be a frightening thing, perhaps people who aren't used to going to court, and because they're talking a different language to you and all that. So I think the point to be is, go to the courts. If you've got time, Go and observe what's going in court. It'll really frighten them. And go there and take notes, you know, and they'll wonder, who are you? What are you doing? Because years ago, courts were quite open forums. You could go in and there'd be a lot of people sat in the court. Now they're trying to close it to these star chambers, these unlawful administrative hearings, which is what we're getting off them now. Right, well, here we go again. Right, I'll tell you another couple of little cases for you, and then I'll explain to you about the process of commercial liens. Yeah? When I was in jail back in the day, there was a famous solicitor in there called Tim Robinson. He represented Fred West, and he was doing 7 years for stealing £7 million of our money, legal aid. Anyway, while he was in there, I got on with him okay. And when I came out of prison, he's obviously disbarred by then, he was still practicing law. So I decided, well, I'll contact him, because maybe he could help the likes of us now, you know, doing this stuff. Well, when I did that, big mistake. He's sending me bills. He tried charging me £12,000 for 3 months' work without doing anything. So, really and truthfully, I thought that's the end of him. So I just said, look, as far as I'm concerned, you're a Mackenzie friend to me. You haven't done anything, £150 an hour. What warrants that? Yeah? Bugger off. And I give him £4,000 and said, that's all you're getting off me. So the next thing, he tried to take me through the court process. Well, one day a car pulls up, 2 guys get out the car and start trying to talk to me. Well, if bailiffs come talking to me, I give them a form. Who are you? What do you want? Is your business lawful? And if you sign it, I'll start contracting with you. Simple as that. Of course, they get this and they know it's not lawful, because lawful is only with your consent. If it's not lawful if it's not got your consent attached to it. So they walked off. 15 minutes later, they came back in a car and they threw a huge, like a table leg at me with an envelope attached sellotape to it and threw it at me. Well, I've got an old disabled dog which nearly hit her. So I picked it up, and it's come from a local solicitor's office. So I thought, right, fine, let's get down this local solicitor's office and sort it out. So I've gone down there with Veronica Chapman and my wife, Linda, and you see the girl on the reception. Said, what are you doing throwing these sticks, getting agents to throw sticks at me? And this solicitor came out. Now, remember, this is a solicitor I was in jail with for 7 years, trying to get someone else to get a debt, but I didn't know this at that time. So we start having a conversation. And he shouts, get the police, get the police. So we said, okay, we'll wait over the road for the police. And I took the stick with me. When I got over the road, police come. Oh, great, here we are. Oh, you're being arrested. What for? Well, for harassing the solicitor over the road. Well, I haven't harassed him. It's them who've harassed me. They've said that I owe them money that I don't owe them. And they've thrown a stick at me. So I was locked up in custody for 10 hours. Of course, when they came to interview me then, they said, right, well, he's made this statement. And in this statement, he'd said that I swore him, F this, F that. I was going to go around his house. And by this time, I'd remembered that I recognised him from prison, because he'd been in prison with me in the 80s. He's done a night course, become a paralegal, and is now charging people around here for £220 an hour. Seriously. So, on the interview, I said, well, I didn't say that, I didn't say this. I said, did he sign a Section 9 statutory statement like? And they said, yeah. I said, well, if he's wrong, he's perverted the course of justice and perjury, 1911 Act. And they said, well, yeah. I said, well, we can solve this anyway then, boys. How? Well, I said, we've got a tape recording in the whole incident. Well, what do you mean? Why didn't you tell us before? Well, you didn't ask. Why should I tell you? Right? So, I then went and got it, they bailed me, I went and got my wife, we got the tape recording, and it all got booted out. So what we had there, we had a bench solicitor who I'd done jail with for 7 years, sending around another bench solicitor who sent a couple of process server thugs to chuck sticks at me. So, but this is what, if it's going on with me, it's going on with everybody, you know, in one form or another. We're all getting this all the time off these people. And so we need to sort it out. And the way to sort it out is take it back to criminal. So we do two things. It's tort law. So remember, tort law is wrong law, and that's the law they've hidden under the carpet for a long, long time. If you get any book on civil procedure law, the first thing you'll discover when you're looking into contract law is the tort. Because if you go and stand on someone's garden and break their blades of grass, that's a tort. But the law profession won't take it on because there's not enough money in it for them. but it's still technically a tort. And so what you do is you bring them to book on it as a tort. You're parking your car, someone's parking their car outside your house every day, and you leave a note on their thing and say, look, why are you parking your car outside my house? I don't want you outside my house. If you keep doing it and they ignore it, well then they've acquiesced, what they call acquiesced estoppel. Well then after a while you send, these are bills of exchange that you've done, so you can prove that they're causing you a wrong, causing you to suffer a tort. This builds on, and then you issue them with a bill of obligation. Now the bill of obligation is a statement of truth. All you do is, you write a statement of truth under pain of perjury if I'm lying. If I'm lying, send me to jail for it. And you get a notary public. You can do it with 3 good men, but do a notary public to stamp that document. It then becomes an official document because you've sworn it to a solicitor for God. That's basically what a notary public is, so that you've sworn under him and God that what you're saying is true and are prepared to go to prison for it if it's not true. Once you've done that then, you give them, which we can give you templates of, which, but I mean, get to know this stuff before you start playing with it. But it's not that hard when you get to know. It's common law, it's common sense. Yeah? And then you get to the allegations department. So what you do is is a workman worthy of his hire? Are we all equal under the law? And they're obviously not going to rebut any of this. Then you come to the allegations. And what your allegations are this guy's caused you to suffer a tort. And you give them 28 days. Their options there then are to rebut it in full, which would neutralise it, or whatever fee you want on it. I mean, I've got 30 commercial liens against 3 or 4 judges, 15 barristers. The council in Hereford now owe me £10 million. So every time they send me a bill now, I'll put in what they call a Part 20 counterclaim. Well, I can prove that they owe me money. So I'll offset it against that. And this is what you do. Now, my bill has already been proved. And it's been proved by the fact they didn't respond to it and didn't rebut it. So acquiesced estoppel comes into play. Now, a unique perspective of this from my own point of view is there was a notary public in Ross-on-Wye that I used to use. Lovely chap called Shawcross, Keith Shawcross, lovely chap. He used to see these documents and said, who crafted this document? Never seen nothing like it before. I said, well, your job is just to say that between me and God, it's official. And he gives it a lovely gold seal, which I'll show you, and it's all official. Well, I sent one to the council solicitors, which are a bunch of particularly nasty parasites in Worcester called Harrison Clark, and I sent them one for £1.1 million, which is £100,000 per director. There's 11 directors. So I sent that to them, and of course Keith Shawcross had actually stamped and processed this for me. Well, come the police interviewing me months and months later, and they've arrested me at 1 in the morning and dragged me out of bed, and where did I get this document from? It looks real. Well, that's because it is real. Well, I said, if you want to talk about fraudulent documents, let's get liability orders and summonses on the table, because none of them are real. None of them come from the court. They all come from the council, which is under the Fraud Act 2006. Fraud. But anyway, the funny thing is that Harrison Clark, the parasitical council solicitors in Worcester, had bought Keith Shawcross' company. And he had told me, you can't come in doing those commercial lien things with me anymore, Guy, because Harrison Clark, unbelievably, have actually bought my company. So when the police questioned me about it, right, which they don't like doing because they don't know what they're talking about really, but they've given me the document. They said, who's the man who's notarising this for you? I said, well, it's Harrison Clark's notary. It's their own notary. They've bought the company. So they've actually legitimised their own document. So, and that's just a funny quirk of what's happened. But I mean, so it's going on. And again, we've got to realise that these people, they don't really know what they're doing. I mean, if someone comes up and kicks me in the leg, I've got a problem with that person. But these guys come around our doors and not. It's just these parasites for people further up the food chain, who they're not happy being millionaires anymore. They want to be billionaires. Yeah. And where's all this money going? Down the back of a settee somewhere. I mean, we know where it's all going. We know it's all fiat. We know all that stuff. But at the end of the day, well, that's right. I mean, statutes, right, are there. They're supposed to finely hone the common law. Finely hone it. That's what they're supposed to do. But they're not, they're just manipulated. Now you put a green bottle in that bag one day and you'll get a £100 fine. It wasn't built for that at all. You know, at the end of the day, we're all individually responsible to each other as human beings, and that's what the tort is all about. That's what tort law is all about. So, if you're interested in any of that, you know, we have documentation, and you know, I say John and Brian and all the wonderful people involved in all this movement have got access to all this stuff off me. We've done templates of this stuff. It does work. I tell you why it works, because the whole... Before I go, the Horn, the solicitor, I told you, that not the Bent solicitor who represented Fred West, but the other one, he got to come round to my house. I gave him a £2,110,000 commercial lien for throwing sticks at me and all the rest of it, because he's vicariously liable. So, of course, this frightened the back out of him. So he went and tried to get an injunction against me. Before, I'm the one who's had the sticks for it. But anyway, he went round to the county court, and the county court refused it to him, so they sent him to the Crown Court in Worcester with a QC, but it was still a county court, but with a circuit judge. And they actually, unbelievably, again, we've got all the documentation, anyone wants to see any of it, they put a liability order, they put an injunction against me, so I'm not allowed to go within 10 metres of his property. I haven't done nothing to him. 10 metres of his property, 10 metres of his office. They're just trying to stop me from enforcing the commercial lien, because they know that it's a debt, it's up and running by their own. All we've done is mirrored what they do, right? Well, then we've written a letter to the judge who gave that document and put a £5 million lien against him. Because basically, by stopping me going down this road in Hereford, I own a lot of property derelict property, but down the road from there. So, as far as I'm concerned, that judge trying to make that order against me in an unconstitutional, court, in an unlawful administrative hearing, has caused me to suffer a tort. So, if I'm arrested, it's going to cost him £5 million. He's got 7 days to respond to me. Judge Hooper, his name is, and if he doesn't respond to me in 7 days, then he's acquiesced. But to let me know if he wants me to go around the town to get to my properties. Because if he wants me to do that, I'm just going to charge him £5,000 every time. So either way. But this is the way you've got to talk to these people. They're just human beings like us, and once it becomes a personal problem with them, then the problem will go away pretty quickly. And everyone that we've had dealings with in the judiciary, they don't stay around for long. They disappear. Touching the tar baby, we call it. A great guy called Randy Kelton. If you go Alex Jones and listen to him talking to a bloke called Randy Kelton, they touch the tar baby. They go running to their seniors. Oh, let's get a bigger judge to sort him out. It's all bluster and bullshit. And all they do is they touch the tar baby. They get tarred themselves, and so they're in the pot as well. And we don't. And if you look for what we do with the commercial liens, we're not trying to get millions of pounds off millions of people here. If they apologise, I'll rip it up. Cease and desist, but they won't, because if they do that, they feel that they'll be commercially liable by writing it. But we have had it. We've had NPower have contacted us and apologised, because at one time, John was with me on the one court case, and I won't bore you with the details, but I kept getting taken back to court by NPower for a human rights notification. I haven't paid the electricity bill on this one property, because on another property, what we discovered when my dad had died, that both NPower and British Gas had both been charging him for the same property. So they owed me the equivalent of £20,000, and they wouldn't give me the money. I was ringing up, and oh yes, my name's Justin, and I'm in charge of it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, oh, Justin's moved to another department. How can we help you? And they just wouldn't give me the money back. So I stopped paying the bills. So I went to these human rights notification hearings where they're just rubber stamping. The rubber stamping claims are there. You know what I mean? Rubber stamping everything into existence. And I said there's a lien on this because basically they owe me more than I owe them, and I can prove it. And I won the case. So it basically, the only way they could do was have a judicial review or an appeal, which they haven't done. So I've got, and they've now withdrawn their contract. But when we went to the court, the case before, I'd said to the judge, I'm not going to keep coming back to these unlawful administrative hearings. You're causing me to suffer a tort, so there's £1 million lien if I get dragged back to a court with you in front of it. And of course, they always have judges in all my cases, no magistrate. And myself and John and a crew of us went, and when we went into the court, police are there in front of the judge, and no judge. Where is he? Oh, he's decided not, he's bottled it. He ain't coming today. He sent the 3 poor magistrates, the poor lay people in. So I said to the magistrates, I mean, this is all on tape as well, I'm sorry you're here today. I was expecting the judge to be here. Right, so I've got no problem with any of you people. I don't actually know you, right, okay? But if you don't dismiss this case immediately, I'll arrest you all. So anyway, they then started flapping around. They said, well, we have to go out to consider our verdict. And I said, no, I have to consider if I'm going to arrest you, and trust me, I will. So they went out the door, and then the funny thing was, the police officers then were talking to John and saying, how do we arrest them? What do we do? Because if they're breaking the law, we expect the officers to do their duty. And if we can show them that they're breaking the law, I expect you to do... Look, that guy who's running in that door, that judge, you don't work for him, you work for us. So anyway, the magistrates went out, and off they went. We had quite a chuckle in the courtroom. Then they came back in and they said, we dismiss this case, but not for the reasons you said. So... But anyway, so I can't really tell you anymore, but I want to say that we are getting mileage on this stuff, and it is all coming together, yeah? And we can help anyone out with any documentation or anything, but it's best to get to know these things, because like I say, I find myself arrested occasionally. It's funny, I got arrested, I tape record in court, and I tell them I tape record in court. And the CPS got me arrested one day for contempt of court. So, in fact, I might have in there actually show you. So I got arrested, Linda came down with me, and we sat in the interview. So they said, you've been taped in court? I said, yeah. They said, well, it's against the law, it's contempt of court. I said, are we talking tennis court, badminton court? What court are we talking about today? They said, well, magistrate's court. I said, that's not a court, that's an unlawful administrative hearing. So I just looked at the camera and said to the camera, CPS, bring it on, it's an unlawful administrative hearing, that ain't a courtroom. Now, if you know the law and you know that isn't a courtroom, it doesn't apply to you. So I got a letter back off him. No further procedure. So there's an old chap from up north who got jail for exactly the same thing, but it's because he just didn't know them specifics. If you did, then it would apply to you as well. So anyway, chaps, I think I've said enough. My mouth's dry and I need a drink. But it's been very nice talking to you, and if we can help you in any way, shape or form, that's what we're here for. We're here to help each other.